my notes. I'm Valerie. I'm a grateful member of Al-Anon. Al-Anon has no opinion on outside issues, but as most of you know, I am an alcoholic as well. So we're what I've heard, I'm what you call a double winner. I probably have other winning traits too, but that's what I know of as of now. That's what I'm working on. Where do I get to start? Okay, when did I find myself in the rooms of Al-Anon? I think the date was somewhere around July of 2023. I was pretty sick at that point, so I don't have a date. I wasn't convinced I needed Al-Anon, so I didn't really pay much attention. But again, thank you guys so much for this conference and this opportunity to speak. I'm really humbled by just being asked. When Eric asked me to speak, I was like, I better make it to more AA meetings so that I know I'm sharp on my recovery. And he's like, well, you're an Al-Anon. And I was like, yeah, okay, all right, so it's an Al-Anon lead. Awesome. Even better. Even better. I'm so grateful to be up here. And my intention is just to spread experience, strength, and hope to you guys, and that there is recovery out there. Not just for the alcoholic, but for the families. I actually want to take a moment of silence to just remember all the children who are affected by this disease who do not have a say in the matter. So please bow your head. Thank you, guys. And if you guys don't like what you hear today, I can direct you to who did ask me again, and you can talk to them about it, or maybe your sponsor. Oh my goodness. As I was going through getting ready to just kind of create an outline for today, I kept coming back to what I was going to say, and I'm glad I wrote notes many times, because every time that I do, I cry. So, you know, if somebody has tissues, I might take them if I need them. But anyway, my name is Valerie. My home group is the Wednesday morning Greensburg Al-Anon meeting. Meets every Wednesday at 9:30 a.m. I have a sponsor, Maureen from Batesville. She has 47 years in Al-Anon. I quickly learned that I wanted a sponsor that had the lifestyle that I was seeking, and she had the happy, joyous, and free. And lots of years she works, like she's going to conferences and helping just in recovery, and she's doing, helping with literature and very active. So I wanted to get with somebody like her to help me go through the steps and sponsor me. Let's see. My story is I am the oldest of 4 kids. I grew up in West Central Wisconsin, near Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Wisconsin's taking over the conference. I grew up I was born, I don't know how many miles, 30, 40 miles away from Eau Claire, which is really ironic. And another cool tidbit of information is I was helping with this event down here, not related to recovery, but one of my friends from down here in Indiana was like, hey, I have this girl that's really interested in doing your event. She's from Eau Claire. And I was like, what? I was just like, that is so crazy. And then to meet Bruce, and this just, my mind is like, wow, great minds think alike, I guess, coming together. Anyway, I was the oldest of 4, so I was definitely the leader. My brother was a year younger than me, and I was always like showing him how to feed. We grew up on a farm, so I showed him how to feed calves. I was like, here, Vin, you feed this calf, and you feed that calf, and I was very controlling over him, and he was just like, he would do what I said, so I just went with it, And I remember growing up too, my dad was so proud to say one day, he's like, you know, I finally got some medication for my bipolar. And I was like, well, good for you, you know, because we did walk on eggshells quite often as kids, especially around my dad. And he never drank, but I hear it in Al-Anon meetings that sometimes those isms are still there, even if they're not drinking, if there's like not like this excessive amount of alcohol. But there was definitely, you know, I just didn't really feel safe or comfortable around my dad growing up. You just never knew who you were going to get. Maybe one day you would get dad sleeping on the couch, and the next day the remote was missing, and it was like all heck broke loose. And my mom was, and probably I don't want to diagnose anybody, but she was probably what they would say is like an untreated Al-Anon or an alligator, I've heard it said in some leads before. She was just she was very, very nice to us kids. Like, we could go to my mom with anything, and she was like right there to help us for anything. We were in 4-H and FFA and stuff like that. She would do anything to make sure our sheep were sheared and our projects were done and this and that. But when it came to like making my dad breakfast, she would just make him like these ratty eggs, and you just knew she wasn't super thrilled to cook for my dad when he came in. Where's the food, you know? And they just kind of grew apart as I got into my teen years. And eventually it got to where one day after I moved here to Indiana, I moved to Indiana in 2014, and it wasn't maybe a couple years after I had moved here. I was like 24 or 23 years old. My mom called me. She's like, I found out your dad's been sleeping with another woman. And, you know, it was just, she was heartbroken because she gave everything to my dad and to whatever he wanted. And she basically said, don't live with me. You know, they still farm together, but like they live in separate houses. She was just done, like right then and there. She cleaned her hands of that relationship and just said, nope, you're not crossing my boundaries anymore, basically is how that worked. So after I had moved to Indiana, it's an interesting story. If some of you guys have heard my talk before, but my husband, he's my boyfriend at the time. I moved to Indiana to get a big kid job after college. I went to the University of Wisconsin River Falls, close to UW-Eau Claire, and after I graduated with this degree in animal science, I told my boyfriend at the time, I said, you can move with me or not, you don't have to, like, whatever, you know, I'm moving, so that's what I'm doing. And we had been together for like, I don't know, 2-3 years or so. And I was not a faithful wife in that relationship. I definitely wasn't loyal, or I didn't have any interest in commitment with him. He played the role of the dad that I never had, kind of, I guess you could say. He paid for my car, paid for my phone, paid for this, that, and the other, just everything that I needed. And he did move to Indiana. You know, he was quick to move down here with me, and we got a house together and financially tied each other up and whatnot. But I mean, I was just really not too keen on whatever he did. I would just do whatever I want with whoever I wanted. And you know, I found myself in recovery from alcohol. And after getting sober, it really got my head clear enough to see like what that relationship was. It was just comfortable, and I just didn't want to be in that relationship anymore. I started just going down this path of finding my higher power and doing what I always felt was right for me at the time. And one day I just went to him and I was like, I'm ready to get divorced. And he's like, okay. So we did. And it was kind of, it reminds me of like a fall tree when the leaf is just ready to fall off that thing. We were just ready to move on, and he wanted to move back home, and I wanted to pursue my dreams and my career and just be sober and happy. And so, yeah, we were living together for a while, and eventually he did move out and move back to Wisconsin, and so I was single and living my very, very, very best life, happy, joyous, free. And let's see. I was just single and, on the dating scene for the first time. When I found my first boyfriend, and, well, he wasn't my first boyfriend, maybe third or second boyfriend and whatnot, but I was ready to actually date and be responsible in the dating scene and whatnot. And there's a couple guys that asked me out and whatnot, but I was wasn't interested or whatever. And I do remember the first time I met my qualifier, as they say in Al-Anon, my now husband. I seen him for the first time at a meeting, and I was like, oh man, you're trouble. If I ever got with you, I'm so in trouble. Because tall, handsome, just my kind of guy. And but I was married at the time. I was started to go to meetings and whatnot. You guys know my story. A lot of you do. But I was divorced. I was single, and he asked me out, and I said, yes, let's go. So we went on a date, and it was great. I really admired his spirituality and how he was connected to God. I didn't know if I thought he had like 3 years sober, which at the time I thought was like a long, long time. Like, that's solid. Like, if you have 3 years of recovery under you, you're golden. That's no big deal. We'll move on. We'll keep it going. Plus, I'm really good. I cook healthy meals. Like, I'm grounded in recovery. Like, this could work, And my first sponsor, she told me, she's like, he's probably, on something right now, And I'm like, nah, what is she talking about? And eventually my first sponsor was like, well, I think we're going to have to part ways because we just don't see eye to eye about this. So I was like, okay, broke my heart. I was definitely hurt, my people-pleasing traits and whatnot. But, we just continued to date, and there were some red flags. There's definitely some red flags that I now see that if I had known what I know now, I would have definitely said, okay, red flag, okay. But he was my husband, at the time, boyfriend, was very insistent. Let's be exclusive. He was telling my grandma we're going to get married, and I was like, okay. He proposed. I said yes, gladly, like very excited. Kind of nervous, but pretty excited overall. But there is just these things that kind of sort of would creep up, like he wouldn't get home from work when he said he was, and he was hanging out with these people that I didn't really prefer he be around because, he's trying to be sober. And I mean, when we started dating, he actually had just gotten out of treatment from a 30-day treatment center. So, he was new in recovery again at that point. One of my friends always says, you never lose the sobriety that you gained from those past years. If you go back out, you still have that knowledge, and you have the tools, and you know what to do. So I was like, yeah, that's right, and everything. And eventually we got married, and our wedding day was like the best day of my life. It was like every Disney princess movie scene that I ever imagined in my mind. I thought it was the best day. I was so happy. My family, who never comes to Indiana, maybe once, have my parents came and my siblings come to Indiana, but they came for our wedding, and I was like so excited. And it was just a very magical, beautiful day. But I did find out, I don't know if it was a few weeks, months later, that he wasn't sober that day. And for a while, I couldn't even look at pictures of our wedding day. Like, I just couldn't even look at them. I was so resentful and angry. I was pregnant on our wedding. I was maybe 2 months pregnant, I think. Very excited to have this baby, but also terrified at the same time. But I never wanted a kid, and he asked me, do you want to have a baby? And I said, heck yeah, like, I'm here for it. Let's go. But, I mean, I was starting to get these resentments that started building and whatnot. And after our son was born, being a new mom, I was just first-time mom, like sitting at home nursing this baby all the time. I wasn't really able to work, you're on maternity leave, and I didn't want to just send a 2-week-old baby off with anybody, so I just stayed home and tried to work from home and everything. Couple of months after our son was born, I started getting really bad panic attacks, which it might have been, I don't know, I didn't get any diagnosis or anything, but they say like postpartum depression and stuff like that. I would get panic attacks while I was driving. Like, I just would be so concerned, like the person behind me was going to hit me. There was actually a time my sister-in-law ended up taking me to the ER because I woke up with just like panic, like everything I knew to do, prayer, meditation, it just wasn't working. And I went to the ER and they just said, oh, you're dehydrated. And I felt like I was gonna literally just like pass out. And they're like, oh, it's just dehydration. Okay. They gave me an antibiotic, which I ended up not taking, but and I was getting a lot more alone. I noticed I was isolating myself, and just being a new mom, I'm sure this is a common thing, but I think his addiction really had me not reaching out to my parents and talking to my mom and dad, and I kind of had a pretty good relationship with my dad, actually, prior to us getting married, and I just felt a lot of guilt and shame around that, and I wasn't talking to people like I used to. Some of the friends that I made in the rooms of AA, I just wasn't speaking to them as much because they would tell me, oh, just divorce him, and he's the one causing the problems and this and that, and I didn't want to hear that. I was like, I'm gonna figure this out on my own. I'll get new friends. And let's see. Eventually, we bought a house together, and that was really exciting because we did have a really tiny home, hobbit home, and we did move in. It was kind of stressful, like lots of bickering and arguing and stuff like that. But we got moved in. I think it was about close to Valentine's Day, 2023. And so we got moved into this new place, bought all the nice furniture. Well, not all of it, but we were pretty, just getting by pretty much financially. So we got what we needed anyway and started settling into our own place, kind of starting fresh, I thought. And I remember one morning, maybe a month after we moved into this new house, this is a really, really hard day for me to remember. I was on Facebook Messenger. Some of the work I do is like through online messaging, through Facebook and stuff. And this girl messages me, and she's like, hey, I need to talk to you about your husband. I was like, okay, I wonder what he maybe applied for some home loan or something like that, or some sort of financial thing or something. She's like, give me a call. And I was like, okay. So I called her, and she was sharing with me these screenshot messages of how my husband was flirting with her and like saying some things that I just wasn't okay with. Like, I was just completely shocked. And I remember just like, I was already having these like panic attacks and whatnot and trying to make ends meet financially, and this was just like a big breaking point for me where it was like, what's going on? Like, is my relationship a lie? And just, I was like shaking more than I am now that day. And actually not shaking too bad. So, I just started building a lot of resentments. I started getting more and more angry, less and less happy. I just couldn't smile and be happy. And that's not like me, especially in recovery. I was so happy, like nothing could get me upset, literally. Like, there was nothing that could bring me down, but I just noticed like I couldn't even just be happy. I couldn't smile and really truly be smiling. It was just fake. Everywhere I went. I had this newborn baby, and there was a time when Malachi was maybe 4 months old, and I knew something was wrong with my husband. I knew he wasn't doing well. Like, he was just didn't make sense when he was talking and just taking off going places and not communicating and whatnot. And I couldn't get a hold of him one day. Like, normally, he checks in like, hey, I'm going here or there. That day, nothing. Like, I would call and he wouldn't answer. And then it started going all the way to voicemail, and I was like, uh-oh. So I started calling his friends. His friends didn't know where he was. I was like, oh man. And, I was like, well, maybe his phone died or whatever. And that day made it to an evening, and it was close to sunset or so. And he took off on his motorcycle, so I was like, hearing every single motorcycle. I had this newborn baby, motorcycles, just everyone. I was like, that's not him. But I could hear him coming, and just like they say in Al-Anon, we get these ears where we can hear the tires of our loved ones' vehicles and whatnot. And so that's how it was. I was like, man, this sucks. It was terrible. I didn't know what to do. I'm like this new mom, and I trusted and put everything into this relationship, and it was just wrecking me. So, I was just losing my connection to my higher power, and a lot of brain fog. My memory wasn't very good. If we'd get into arguments, I would always lose arguments because he was probably always right. I couldn't remember if I put the noodles on the stove or not. It was just like, okay, well, you're probably right, okay. But I would still be mad and hold resentments and grudges and whatnot. So my sponsor in AA told me, hey, why don't you go maybe get a therapist? I got a therapist, and we went to couples counseling, and that really just made everything worse. We went to quite a few therapy sessions, and it just really didn't help. It just caused more arguments, and it just made me madder and more afraid and whatnot. But I went on this retreat a couple of years prior to getting married, and there was this lady that mentioned that she was a part of Al-Anon, and she would say some things about a few children I knew that had alcoholic parents, and she would kind of take the alcoholic side. And I was like, well, these kids are right for being mad, like, from what happened. And she didn't view it like that. That just kind of put something in my head about what kind of thinking do they think over there in Al-Anon meetings? What is that about? And so, interestingly enough, my husband knew I was getting mad. Like, I was trying to get help, but I couldn't talk to anybody that really felt like they knew what I was dealing with. this resentment and this anger and this brain fog and just confusion that I was dealing with, kicking the dog syndrome. I re-seen myself. I was just like my mom, frying them eggs, all pissed off and mad. And my husband said, there's a lady that I think she goes to some Al-Anon meetings. I think you might talk to her. And he said that for probably a couple months. And eventually I got her phone number, and I don't know what happened. We got in an argument one day, and I was just so done. I was so tired, so sick and tired of being sick and tired. I called this woman, and she's like, "Oh, you're on the merry-go-round of disaster. You're right. You're getting in the cage with the 100-pound gorilla, who's crazier, right? Like the alcoholic, you're not even drinking and you're acting this crazy. So who's the crazy one?" And I was like, oh, snap. And she told me her story about her husband and what happened with her alcoholic husband and his drinking problem and how it affected her. And it was my story. It was literally the exact thing that I was dealing with. Nobody liked my spouse other than me, but I was still resentful too. And we were on that phone that day, and she took me to my first Al-Anon meeting a couple days later. And we rode to the meeting together, and she talked about that elephant in the room of alcoholism, that chaos. And I told her what happened, and I broke down crying, and I told her, I missed out on the whole first year of my son's life. Like, I was there, but I wasn't there. And I hated that. That didn't sit well with me at all. But when I went into that meeting, it was a relief, really. I mean, it was like an instant, like, oh, these people, they understand. I just seen this room of people that were just like everyday normal people, talking about Al-Anon, talking about alcoholism and how it affects the family. It doesn't just affect the alcoholic. It's interesting that disease of alcoholism is different than cancer or diabetes. Like cancer and diabetes, yeah, it does affect the family, but not in the way that alcoholism affects the family. So I really just thought, okay, this is where I need to be. I need to go to these meetings. I need to talk to these people. They might be onto something here. And in that meeting, I don't remember if it was the first meeting or maybe the second or third meeting, I broke down crying and I said, I feel like it's okay that I love this person, even though they hurt me. They taught me that it's okay to love them. I'm not wrong. I just needed to learn some detachment skills and some boundaries and put them into practice. But I would go to meetings, and they gave me all these books. They gave me some literature and got me on the straight and narrow with what readings, and how to read the readings and the literature and all the things. And I just still I wasn't fixing me all the way. I was still holding on to resentments. I still felt like a zombie most days. I would go into work and do my job, but it wasn't like I loved it. It was just, here I am doing this thing and still worried about texting the wrong thing or saying the wrong thing or, getting in arguments or causing problems. I slept in my car a few nights after some arguments, and I'll show him, I'll go sleep in my car down the road in a parking lot, like just crazy stuff. Ran away. I moved out for a few days, and that didn't really seem to help. It just really aggravated the situation. About a year after I started going to meetings and doing the readings more and trying to get more involved, we got in an argument where my husband said something about, you go on these trips and you talk to these men and you're flirting and this and that. And I screamed so loud back at him that I lost my voice for 6 days after that. I was like, you don't even know me. So a few months went by. It was about Christmas time last year, and I was like, every time we went back home prior to that, it was a struggle. Like, we would get in arguments on the car ride. It's an 8-hour ride to go visit my family up there, and my grandma was just, she could tell, like, she could see it in my face clear as day, like there was an issue, and I had to try to tell my grandma what was going on. And she said something yesterday in the lead about my mom was my conscience, and I feel like my grandma's like my conscience. Like, to tell my grandma was just like devastating. So I got back from that Christmas trip, and I sat in a meeting, and God was putting it on my heart to reach out for a sponsor, to reach out to somebody that could help me. So I used the skills that you guys taught me in AA. You know, probably don't pick the one that has like maybe 3 weeks of sobriety. Like, try to find the one that might have, you know, not the one that coddles you and tells you what you want to hear and cares about your feelings, but the one that's going to tell you how it is. And at first, I was intimidated by this lady. I was like, oh, gosh, I need to ask her. She's pretty, you know, hardcore, straight to the point, like doesn't have any fluff and whatnot. And I was like, I need to ask her. I knew exactly who I was supposed to ask. So one day, you know, after I came back from that trip, I was like, would you sponsor me and work through the steps with me? And she's like, oh yeah, absolutely. I said, oh, thank goodness. What a relief. What a relief. She taught me to say things like, oh, when you're in an argument, just take that Al-Anon pause and say, repeat after me. Oh. You don't have to scream, you don't have to yell, you don't have to be right. It's an ego deflation, as I was reminded the other day. You might be right, is something else somebody in the meetings told me too. Say what you mean what you say, just don't say it mean. And we worked through the steps, and this lady didn't live close to me, but she made a point to come all the way to my house and work through the steps with me, which was really just amazing. Step 1, you know, admitted we were powerless over alcohol and the alcoholic, that our lives had become unmanageable. When I went to the meetings, at first I was pretty interested to see that people in the meetings of Al-Anon aren't just spouses. It's not just the wives of the alcoholic. There's parents, moms and dads of kids out there using, drugging, drinking, siblings, friends of alcoholics are in these meetings. I haven't seen any teenagers in the local meetings, but they do have, you know, meetings for teenagers that have alcoholic parents. It's my unsolicited personal opinion that, you know, being part of AA, it's like, I have so many friends in the program, and the Al-Anon principles just really speak to how those relationships are. AA taught me to get clean and sober, and Al-Anon teaches me how to live and have relationships today, and I'm so grateful for both. You know, we admitted we were powerless. I needed to go to that meeting. I needed to be in a meeting. I couldn't just read literature and do this on my own. One of the readings that we read every meeting is, we who live or who have lived with the problem of alcoholism understand as perhaps few others can. We too were lonely and frustrated, but in Al-Anon we discovered that no situation is really hopeless, and that it is possible for us to find contentment and even happiness, whether the alcoholic is still drinking or not. We're powerless over the alcoholic, just like the alcoholic is powerless over alcohol. I learned the 3 C's of Al-Anon. I didn't cause it, can't control it, can't cure it. I used to think early, just even in my relationship with my husband, that if I would have vacuumed the house that day a little bit better, maybe he wouldn't have ran off on that motorcycle and went and did whatever he did. Like, literally, I thought if I would have had a different shirt on that day, maybe if I would have been working out and if I was a little toner, a little prettier, things like that. Maybe if I would have made dinner right, I was fully convinced of that. And you guys, it took me almost 2 years in this program to realize that I don't cause it. And I'm an alcoholic myself, so I know, like, I had to meet my own rock bottom. But I just couldn't, for somebody else, I'm a really good cook, you know? Like, it took me working with a sponsor to really understand that. I'm glad and grateful that I can even laugh today. I said that in a meeting a few weeks ago. I was like, I'm glad I can laugh at myself. Because there's a long time where a couple of years where I would just, laugh, but it wasn't really funny to me. Anything, nothing. I've worked through this book called Pathways to Recovery, and it says when one person in a family has alcoholism, it affects the whole family, and all become sick. Because unlike diabetes, alcoholism is a disease of relationships. We react to the behaviors, we hide behind it, make up for it, control it, or just get hurt by it. I was getting hurt. I blame the person for my hurt, for everything that went wrong. I blame my husband. And then I started blaming other people too for my problems. Not just him, but everybody. I had a good resentment against AA for a while because I was like, everybody's lying in these meetings. I can see it. I just had so many resentments. It just spurred out into everything. When we focus on our own lives and our own part in the problems, a serenity prayer, right? Accept the things we can't change and the things we can. That thing I can change is me. 2, came to believe a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Walking into a meeting, asking for help from a sponsor, read, pray, meditation. Sometimes my higher power was hard to reach. A lot of times. I had to really, a God of my understanding really had to change and evolve for me. I had to get a bigger God. I had to get real with God. I had to tell him what was hurting, what was so pitiful, what was so painful. Wrote some letters. And my sponsor reminded me over and over again, your God is caring, he's nurturing. I say he, but sometimes I had to go outside and look at a tree and see, okay, there's spiritual energy out here, so let's do that and act as if maybe this great power outside can help me. Just whatever it took for me to see that there is a higher power that can restore me to sanity. Because sometimes prayers were just, saying the serenity prayer was just too far off for me. Like I heard it said in the lead this morning, God doesn't help people like me. I'm too sick. I'm too messed up. I'm too this. I kicked my dog. I'm a sinner. God's not messing with me. And even too, the collective wisdom of a group. Just anytime I get in a meeting, it just really humbles me to that power. And sometimes I just have to look at my own child and be like, I didn't make that. That was a higher power. So seeing, my son's face reminds me of my higher power. And that there's this energy that can heal and can restore me. And just giving it surrendering every single thing, every single ego thing, everything I think I know. Yeah. Taking better care of myself. Even too, just dumb jokes. Sometimes my higher power was a laugh from a really bad joke. Have you guys heard of the Al-Anon handshake? And there's Al-Anon coffee too. It's called decaf. I can make these jokes because I'm laughing at myself. But laughing really, truly, it definitely brings me closer to my higher power. It's like watching those silly cat videos or something. Step 3, I made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God, as we understood God. Commit to trying. It's like the 3 frogs that sit on the log, and one decides to jump off. How many frogs are left on the log? 3. Because they just decided they didn't take that leap. So, turn the alcoholic over to the care of God. A lot of the prayers that I was praying was just help me, help me, help me, help me. And that helped, just to say help, please help. And those prayers to turn over the alcoholic to God. Turn my husband's, wherever he is, why is he acting the way he's acting, why am I finding these different colored things? I just don't know much about drugs, but this probably might be that. I don't know, but I have to turn that over. Pray for him. To seek God as we understood God. No, I get complacent. So when things go good, it's almost like it's hard, but I have to remember to say thank you, praying to God for thanks. Another thing that really helped me with step 3 to make a decision to turn my will and life over to the care of God as I understood God was to detach with love and not middle finger detachment, as somebody's taught me. Because I was really good at middle finger detachment. Maybe I didn't use my middle finger, but I would just leave. Or I would give you the silent treatment. Or I treated the way that you deserve to be treated. I was well justified to be pissed off and mad because you left me, you did this, you did that. You left your kids high and dry. So, I'm not just going to talk to you, or I'm not going to make you eggs in the morning anymore. So I learned to pray for the alcoholic. That's how I detach with love, is I pray for their highest good. And I go to meetings. And when there's no chairperson there, and I'm maybe not in the best position to even read the readings or do anything, I still try. Because really that's what's important. That gets me out of myself. There's been a few meetings I've had to chair where definitely wasn't able to even finish chairing the meeting. I was too sad to cry. It's just like too full of tears, unable to speak. Just so hurt and so broken and so rejected and all those things. But it gets me out of that self. So now I'm working on step 4 with my sponsor, and she's like, "Oh, you've worked step 4 before." I said, "Yeah, I'll probably be done today." And she's like, "We're going to use this book." And this book is 93 pages long, through step 4, and I'm on page 32, maybe, and it's taken about 6 months to get that far. And it's just really helped me to work through those resentments, the justification that I had. I was so justified. And it also helps release my attitude, that I carry, that negative attitude. It just works through all of that trash and that garbage that I compiled. And I'm so glad that this is showing me that I don't need to completely abandon my husband. I don't need to abandon him because of this disease. I just need to understand and build these boundaries and communication. Communication is so key, and I think doing step 4 and then we do step 4 and step 5 together, where I tell her what I have for step 4 as I do it and go through things. But it's just freeing me up from all of that turmoil, confusion, chaos, control, to where I can even, take on communication skills, like saying what I mean and meaning what I say without saying it mean. The other day, we were in the kitchen and things were going great. We were having a great night. Me and my husband were just enjoying the evening, and I guess my hamburgers got a little cold or something like that. And he's like, he just started going off like this, I hate my life and this and that. And I was like, well, about maybe 20 minutes ago, it seemed like you were just fine. And I said it in a nice, respectable way. I was so proud of myself, could communicate instead of just, kind of like I just see my mom, like 30-some years of being married and then blowing one blow-up situation and left. Well, I was able to just say what I meant in that moment rather than holding back. And now I try to do that today, where I just say, without being loud or angry, and even too, my sponsor says, make it funny, stay light about stuff. Don't be so serious, how important is it? And she's right, and I'm really grateful for AI, because you can kind of say, like, I'm in this predicament right now with this conversation. Make a funny joke that I could include in this statement. And they're just like the cheesiest jokes you could ever imagine. But, I try to incorporate them into my speech, and it really does help to where we're not hating each other in every single disagreement or, scenario that's happening. And all these things, I can take them out into the world and other types of communication and not have to be so serious. And I want to read a reading. Let's see, how much time do we got? Okay. I want to read a reading that comes from the Al-Anon literature, Courage to Change. This is a daily reader. Oh, man, I lost my page. Oh, here it is. December 13th, Courage to Change. Flying down a hill on a bicycle, I always feel tremendously alive, in perfect balance. Al-Anon helps me to balance my life as if it were a ride on a bike, and to carry that vitality into each day. Especially when I apply the slogan, live and let live. I try to embrace whatever life brings, with all its joys and sorrows, for it has something to offer me. I made that discovery one night in Al-Anon, in an Al-Anon meeting, when someone asked, what would happen if I started thanking God when problems occurred? At first, I had to force myself to say, thank you, God, through clenched teeth. By and by, my teeth unlocked, and I replaced self-pity with gratitude. I truly began to live. When I live my own life to the utmost, it is easier to let others live their lives. Aliveness is mine. I pray others are blessed with it too. Today's reminder, I want the very best for those I love. I am growing to appreciate the joy of fully participating in life, and I choose to allow others to enjoy this sometimes difficult but rewarding blessing of learning from all their experiences. Today, I will live and let live. It is good to have an end to journey towards, but it is the journey that matters in the end. Ursule Le Guy. Thank you guys for letting me share my experience, strength, and hope. It's a true honor, and I know I'm going to get asked a lot, but I'm due in October on the 7th, so I only have 6 more weeks to carry this squash around. But thank you guys. That's all I have.
Thank you so much, Valerie. And we will close the meeting.